In Season 2, Episode 3 of House of the Dragon, The Burning Mill, Daemon Targaryen has a very honest conversation with the Castellan of Harrenhal, Simon Strong, and it doesn't seem like the general consensus or the approval rating is very high for the Liege Lord of the Riverlands, which would be Lord Grover Tully out of Riverrun. This House Tully slander instantly took me back to Season 3 of Game of Thrones when we were introduced to Catelyn's family. Now, I'm not including Sir Brynden Tully, the Blackfish, in this. There's no mistaking that he is an absolute badass. No one's questioning his resume or his CV. The guy's an absolute legend. No one would ever call that man a bitch. I am talking about Lord Edmure, as we're seeing here in this little picture right here. He's about to send his father off to sleep forever with the fish there in the riverbed in the Riverlands. Problem is that the man's not exactly an archer virtuoso, as we see. He misses a couple arrows there, and it's pretty hard to watch. It's pretty embarrassing, and that's when the Blackfish comes in and instantly just, and almost like lazily shoots the arrow up into the air and hits the target. The point here that I want to make is that is House Tully, and again, it hit me whenever I was watching this in the Burning Mill episode of House of the Dragon. Is House Tully the least feared and most disrespected great house in all of Westeros? I think there's a really, really strong case here that they are. Let's talk about it. All right, so is House Tully the least feared great family in all of Westeros? Let's take a look here at their co-workers, if you will, their peers, and just use the old eyeball test and just go off of memory here. Are there any of the other great families that are as disrespected as the Tullys are? We'll start here in the north at Winterfell. Quick answer, no. All right, I think it's safe to say that the Starks are pretty revered, feared for the most part, and I would say in all the good ways, not feared in the way that maybe a Tywin Lannister is feared, but feared in all the good ways, right? They're there to support the North, but at the same time too, if you step out of line, they're going to put you back in your place quickly and harshly. So again, Winterfell, no way. I would say the Winterfell's on the exact opposite end of the spectrum there that Riverrun and House Tully's in. I do want to add a little pointer in here as we take a look that there's Winterfell right there. And if we go all the way down to Riverrun, let's not forget that in Game of Thrones and the War of the Five Kings, that Riverrun was ready to bend the knee on behalf of all of the Riverlands and let the North be their overlords and their kings. Don't forget, Robb Stark was the king of the North and the Trident. That means the Riverlands too. So House Tully bent the knee on behalf of Riverrun and all of the Riverlords of the Riverlands, and they were going to roll up to the North. That's some beta shit. Let's be real. That is, again, I know they had their reasons and everything, but that is some beta shit here. So if we're looking back here, are they the least feared? Are they the most disrespected? When you pull some shit like that, people are going to have some doubts. Okay, let's fly a little bit more south here and talk about the Vale and the Eyrie, and as House Arryn is disrespected by their bannermen and vassals as House Tully are. In short, no. Is there a lot of internal squabbling between House Arryn with second and third cousins, or the Arryns from Galltown that feel that they have a better claim to the Big Falcon than the person that it was passed down to? Yeah, there's a lot of that. Look, do they suckle on their teat a little bit longer in the Eyrie? Sure, right? I think that's safe to say. I'm not here to question nutrition and altitude and things of that nature, but when it comes to vassals and bannermen obeying and following their liege lord, I think that the Vale does a pretty good job, and I think the Arryns have a pretty secure hold over their bannermen. It's nothing like you see in the Riverlands. Again, like I said before, there's a lot of internal squabbling with distant cousins and relatives about who should be controlling the Vale, but it typically doesn't have anything to do with the bannermen. So I think House Arryn's safe there. I think that they're better off and have a higher approval rating than the Tullys do. Okay, so if we go over and follow the yellow cursor here, we're going to go to the Iron Islands, and we're going to talk about House Greyjoy. Is House Greyjoy revered and respected by their bannermen? Very quick answer. If you thought the House Arryn answer was quick, this is really quick. The super quick answer is yes. And if it was anything but yes, there would be another family ruling over the Iron Islands. So let's move on. All right, if we're going to go down the coast here, and we're going to talk about the Westerlands next. We're going to go to Casterly Rock. If you take a look here, there's my yellow cursor. We were just in the Iron Islands, and we go down the western coast. There's Casterly Rock right there, which was obviously the seat of House Lannister. Now, historically, is House Lannister a family to be respected and feared? And I would say overall, yes. Are there some lords here and there that aren't as respected as much as the rest of them? Yeah, no doubt about it. So let's take a look here at Tytos Lannister. Now, who's Tytos Lannister? I've never heard of that name before. Well, guess what? If I tell you who his son is, you're going to know all about him. And his son's Tywin Lannister. Ever heard of him? Right. So whoever, the person that Tywin is that we see in Game of Thrones, his dad was the exact opposite, right? His dad was someone that was not respected, not feared. He would lend money out. It would come back unrepaid. He would give out orders, and, his bannerman would not listen to the orders at all. People basically took advantage of him, and they thought he was a complete fucking joke. Tywin saw this. Like, he saw this in live time. Like, they're like, everyone knows that my dad's a joke. They're laughing at House Lannister, and it pissed him off, right? It completely burned a hole through his pants, and he made it his life goal and his life objective to never see his house laughed at again. And I think that's probably a big driving force and factor is who the person Tywin is, why we see him do the stuff that Tywin does, right? Again, we know what happened to the Reynes and the Tarbecks. He completely extinguished their houses because of how much they defied House Lannister. He completely wiped them out. All right, so that's what Tywin did because his dad was so weak and his dad brought such shame on the house that he just completely flipped it and said, this will never happen again. We've not seen a Tully do that, okay? So again, if we're talking about the Lannisters and what the Lannisters, how they're looked at, right? And how what their perception is amongst their bannermen. Yeah, again, there might be like a weak lord maybe here and there, but in this particular case, maybe the weakest of them all. Look how that's followed up on. It's followed up by Tywin, and look what he does. You're not stepping a toe out of bounds with that guy calling the shots. So that's the Westerlands. That's House Lannister. Are they as weak or perceived to be as weak and disrespected as the Tullys are in the Riverlands? No. All right, next we go down here to Highgarden, and that being House Tyrell. Now, Tyrell, they have something actually in common with the Tullys, that they were promoted during Aegon's conquest, just like the Tullys were. So the Tullys and the Tyrells, in short, were not kings of their respective regions there whenever Aegon's conquest came to Westeros. So they're more recent leaders of their respected regions, which I think can probably cause maybe a little disdain from their bannermen. Maybe there's a little bit less respect there just because they were promoted into that position, right? It's like your buddy at work, like, is just like a promoted instead of you, and like you're just like, that guy got it. So like maybe the Brackens and the Blackwoods and the Lannisters and the Reach are looking at the Tullys like that, and the same thing in the Reach. Maybe the Tarleys or the High Towers are looking at House Tyrell and being like, "You guys got Highgarden? That's who Aegon gave Highgarden to, was you guys." It's probably something similar to that. Look, in short, are the Tyrells as disrespected as the Tullys are in the Riverlands? The answer to that is no. Again, they do have something in common. Again, like I just said, that they were promoted into that position. Are there times maybe where they have some bannermen maybe that are like leaning towards the other side? Sure, maybe. Like, we're definitely not seeing it right now so far in the second season of House of the Dragon, just because the High Towers and how much power they have in their respected area in Old Town, and then also again in the capital with Aegon and Alicent and Otto. Again, they have a lot of favor there. So naturally, people are going to follow suit. It's one of those weird circumstances that a Lord Paramount is a non-Lord Paramount is pulling more weight and throwing more weight around than the liege lord of that region, which is House Tyrell. Do you really think at this point that House Tyrell is going to say that, hey, you know what? The High Towers are in King's Landing. The High Towers are in Old Town. I actually think I'm going to go Team Black. No, they're not going to do that. Okay, so they're not going to defy, again, what the High Towers are doing. And again, it's one of them weird circumstances. Are they being cucked a little bit by them? Yeah, I think that's probably safe to say. They're not the Lord Paramount of the Reach yet. I would think it's safe to say that right now the High Towers are probably calling more shots than the Tyrells are. But look, historically, is there a lot of unrest in the Reach? Is there a lot of rebellion in the Reach? Nah, I don't think so. Nothing like on the level of like what we see in the Riverlands with House Tully, right? And what they have to deal with the Blackwoods and the Brackens and the Freys and all of that goes with it. I don't think that there's anything on that level. So let's move on from the Reach. All right, so next we go into Dorne here, and we take a look at House Martell. If you see Sunspear right here, that's where House Martell is, all the way there at the end there by the coast. Now, first and foremost, you want to make note that House Martell and Dorne, they do not join officially the Seven Kingdoms and bend the knee to the Targaryens until almost 200 years after Aegon's conquest. So that's how long they defied the Iron Throne and the Targaryens. Pretty impressive stuff there, considering how everyone else bent the knee or was defeated right off the bat. Look, in regards to Dorne, they're pretty unified. There's not a lot of, turmoil there in Dorne in regards to them defying Sunspear and House Martell. So this is a very quick one, guys. It's no. I mean, Dorne's pretty unified. Again, they may bend the knee to the Iron Throne, but when it comes down to it, in like what's best for them, they're going to do what's best for Dorne. And it's really as simple as that. So no, there's no turmoil there that is comparable to what we see in the Riverlands at all. Okay, so we're going to go up to the Stormlands after this. So we're going to go from Sunspear down here in Dorne all the way up that eastern coast to Storm's End. That is the capital of the Stormlands. That's where House Baratheon sits. Look, guys, in comparison's sake to the Riverlands and House Tully, is there that same turmoil there between the Baratheons and all their vassals and bannermen? The quick answer is no. The Baratheon are typically pretty strong. I would say they're similar to Starks for the most part. And for the most part, like Lannisters, again, they have a pretty good rule over their region. They don't have a lot of people, in open rebellion or defying what they say. The Baratheons do pretty good with just keeping everyone in line and in check. So are the Baratheons as disrespected as the Tullys are? No. Okay, so now that we've completed our tour across the realm of Westeros and spoke about all of the great houses, and we try to figure out, is there a less feared great house in all of Westeros than House Tully? For me, the answer is simple. It's no. I do think that they're the cream of the crop, and they get that award for least feared great house. And I don't think it's even close, really. I wanted to talk about this little snippet here. This is from House Tully's Wiki of Ice and Fire by the Aegon's Conquest portion. It talks about whenever Aegon makes the Tullys the Lord Paramounts of the Riverlands, being liege lords, they were outnumbered soldier-wise and what they could output on the field by 4 of their bannermen, the Brackens, the Blackwoods, the Vances, and the Freys could all put out more soldiers than House Tully, and the Mootons of Maidenpool were more wealthy. It lastly points out that the Lannisters were considered more prestigious, but I don't really give a shit about that. The first 2 components I do think are important, right? When you talk about being a liege lord and having the respect and that little bit of fear, that healthy amount of fear that keeps people in line, right? We talked about Lord Tywin before. I do think that those first 2 components are very important, right? If you can put out a high soldier output, people are less likely to take advantage of you, and they're going to listen to your rule, and they're going to fall in line. You got 4 other houses in your realm that can put a higher number of soldiers out than you can, right? And then you're not even the wealthiest family in your region. And again, that's maybe not as important. I think the first one's the worst, though. But you probably want to be top of the charts, at least in one of those respects, and they're not. Okay, so the last point I want to make here, and why truly I feel that it's critical that House Tully does get that respect from their bannermen. They really do need to unify and be together because the Riverlands is so exposed. We take a look here at the dark blue area right there. That is the Riverlands. The light blue area right there is the Vale. The gray area is the north. The red area here is the Westerlands. This like green, yellow, shitty looking color is the Iron Islands. The black area there, dark gray, is the Crown Lands. And the green area right there is the Reach. There's only 2 kingdoms that the Riverlands don't share a border with, and that is the Stormlands and then Dorne. So again, they're exposed from every single angle. Like look at the north, for example. You can really only like attack them via navy, or you have to go up through the neck, which people typically don't have a lot of success doing that. The Riverlands, they don't have that benefit, right? They're exposed at every border. The Westerlands, the Iron Islanders can go, and they traditionally will attack Seaguard, right? They'll go there and reave and pillage and do all the stuff that they do there at Seaguard. You look at the Reach, they're exposed to the south from the Reach. They're in close proximity to King's Landing, and the Vale is right on top of them as well to their northeast. So that's why I think you try to see them make so many alliances. You certainly saw House Tully do that in the Game of Thrones, or right before Game of Thrones, where he tries to marry, or does marry, his 2 daughters off to overlords from other realms. Lysa Tully being married off to Jon Arryn in the Vale, and then well, it's initially supposed to be Brandon Stark and Kat. Brandon Stark, we know what happens to him, and then she goes to Ned. Ned's obviously the Overlord of the North. So you see them try to make those alliances, and I do think it's important for them. But really, it just starts like inside their own home and some like good general housekeeping for the Riverlanders and House Tully to just can we at least be unified in the Riverlands? Because if we're not unified here, we're like really, really exposed and vulnerable, because any of these other realms here want to take a shot at us. We're exposed. Look, in general, I feel really bad for House Tully just because it's such an uphill battle for them. They have to keep their classroom in check before they can worry about what everybody else is doing around them, and they just have a hard enough time doing that. Like Daemon said to Simon Strong in the Burning Mill episode of House of the Dragon, episode 3, they need to obey their liege lord, regardless. I don't care how old Lord Grover is or how senile he is or bedridden he is. They need to obey their liege lord. And for Daemon, it's very simple. It's very black and white. But, you know, I just don't think that he has like a pulse on the Riverlands maybe as closely as other people do. And Simon Strong probably does. He's probably like, dude, it's not that simple. It's really not. Like we have people here, like factions and vassals of the Riverlands that have just warred and hated each other for centuries and centuries and centuries. And one side, Blackwood, picks Rhaenyra. The other side, just out of spite, the Brackens are going to pick Aegon just so they can fight each other, right? We see what happens at the beginning of the episode. So, you know, they're by default, just off the jump. Like they don't even have like a uniformed approach to this war in general. So that's their biggest battle right off the top. Like they can't be on the same page. You know, then you look here and say for the most part, let's say they go with Daemon and Rhaenyra. Okay, well, the Westerlands is going to go ahead and side with Aegon. Okay, so there's the Westerlands right there. They're on top here to the west. And then you have the Reach right here to your south. We know the Reach, right, with the high towers and the Tyrells. They're going to go ahead and pick Aegon too. So they're exposed here to this whole south and this whole west border. They got to worry about that. And they also got to worry about like House Bracken and whoever else decides to join Aegon in the Riverlands. It's a tough job, man. I don't know if it's a tough job, and it doesn't sound like it pays enough to make it worth it. So House Tully, they got a lot of work to do. They got their work cut out for them. It's a tough gig. Respect to them for trying. There's some good stuff coming up though with House Tully. I feel pretty confident that we're going to get some good House Tully characters introduced here. If it's not this season, the next season, maybe some of their best characters. So that's the video here. I just wanted to make it. I was thinking about it whenever Daemon and Simon Strong were having that conversation, and it made me think back at the Game of Thrones days when the Tullys weren't very revered or respected there either, and it just felt like, I don't know, I want to say a coincidence, but it seemed like it was a trend, and we needed to take a further look here. But after we do take a further look at it, I think it's pretty clear that House Tully is the least feared out of all the great houses in Westeros. So drop me a comment. Let me know what you guys think. What do you feel? Do you think it's House Tully? Do you think it's another house? What did I miss? Let me know. If you enjoyed this video, please like. If you want to see more, please subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks.